Hello, welcome to this installment of the Evexia Nutraceuticals webinar series. Today's topic is CBD and will be presented by the Director of Clinical Support and Education, Dr. Wayne Sedano. Let's review a few updates regarding Evexia Nutraceuticals before we get started. We recently expanded our catalog of offerings by incorporating more than 50 new products, including CBD. Also, you can now order online through our easy-to-shop catalog and discover a more responsive experience with our all-new mobile-friendly design. Visit EvexiaNutraceuticals.com today and choose from almost 140 products from 19 different categories. Now, for today's presentation on CBD, Dr. Wayne Sedano.
Well, hi, this is Dr. Sedano, and welcome to the presentation. So it's important to know that CBD, cannabidiol, is one of more than 120 naturally occurring cannabinoids found in the Cannabis sativus plant, and that there are various CBD formulations have been tested in preclinical studies to have diverse medicinal properties, such as the ones you see on this slide: anti-nausea, anti-emetic, anti-tumor, anti-inflammatory, antidepressant, antipsychotic, and anti-anxiolytic. So as you may know, CBD has a rich history as a plant medicine going back thousands of years. And one of the main ways it interacts with the body is by mimicking and augmenting the effects of natural compounds that are found in our body called endogenous cannabinoids or endocannabinoids. Now, these endocannabinoids are part of what's known as the endocannabinoid system, which is a lipid signaling system that's important for regulating many functions throughout the body, which I'll be talking about. So the components in the endocannabinoid system includes the cannabinoid receptors 1 and 2, the two endogenous or endocannabinoids called anandamide and 2-arachidonol glycerol, and the endocannabinoid anabolic and catabolic enzymes. Now, in regard to the receptors, the CB1 receptors are mainly found in the brain and other parts of the central nervous system, and to a lesser degree throughout the body. And the CB2 receptors are mostly found in the peripheral organs, especially in cells associated with the immune system. What's important to know is that endocannabinoid signaling is involved in regulation of cells, tissues, organs, homeostasis, brain development, neurotransmitter release and synaptic plasticity, and cytokine release from the microglia. Now, you may remember that the microglia cells are specialized cells of macrophages that are found in the central nervous system. They're involved in removing damaged neurons and infections and are important for maintaining the health of the central nervous system. Now, dysregulation of these cells has been implicated in multiple neurological disorders. Essentially, the endocannabinoids are like a key that fit into the respective receptors, CB1 and CB2, that create a response, and this system is widespread throughout the body. So here's a look at the CB receptors throughout the body. You'll notice that there are some areas of the body that house both of these receptors. So let's take a look at that. So on the top, you see here's the brain that has the CB1 receptor. You can go on the bottom, the immune system, the CB2 receptor. And when you look at the liver, it has a CB1 and CB2 receptor, the pancreas, CB1, CB2 receptor, skin, CB1, CB2 receptors. So you may want to pause the slide and take a closer look at where the receptors are located. So in summary, here's what you need to know. The endocannabinoid system plays a crucial role in regulating a broad range of physiological responses that affect our everyday experience, such as our mood, our energy level, our intestinal fortitude, immune system activity, blood pressure, bone density, glucose metabolism, how we experience pain, stress, hunger, and so much more. And that endocannabinoid system dysregulation appears to be involved in many pathological conditions. So here are some of the desirable effects of modulating this system. So with modulating this system with supplementation, it can help decrease pain, inflammation, tissue injury, anxiety, and insulin resistance, and increase glucose tolerance and support a proper appetite. So simply put, the endocannabinoid system is the part of the body designed to respond to the environment both internally and externally, and by doing so, it initiates a particular response, which then creates a chemical change that causes changes in the brain and the body as needed. It's similar or analogous to the adrenal gland response to the fight or flight mechanism, which I'm sure you're familiar with. So in regard to pain relief, this slide lists several mechanisms used by the endocannabinoid system for pain relief. So as you can read on the slide, starting up the top, you can see that the endocannabinoids, they're going to attach to the CB1 receptors in the nervous system. They're going to help modulate neurotransmitter activity, reduce inflammation. They will alter the ion gate, the sodium-calcium channels, which are involved in pain reception. They can potentiate glycine currents. They can improve serotonin receptor activity, reduce functional firing of pain centers in the brain, and help decrease sprouting of pain-sensitive nerve endings. So there's a lot going on with the endocannabinoid system and the use of CBD. So now I want to talk about the cannabis-like substances that are naturally produced in the body to help give you a deeper understanding of the endocannabinoid system. And as you see on the slide, these are the two main endogenous cannabis-like substances that are produced in the body, which are both small molecules derived from fatty acid metabolism from the fatty acid arachidonic acid. Now, these substances bind to the cannabinoid receptor, as I showed you before, and then they create a response. Now, the CB1 receptor in the brain are densely distributed and related to motor control, cognition, emotion responses, motivation behavior, and homeostasis. And then outside the brain, the endocannabinoid system is one of the crucial modulators of the autonomic nervous system, immune system, as well as for microcirculation. So these endogenous cannabinoids or the endocannabinoids, they're released upon demand from the lipid precursors, as I talked about on a previous slide, and serve as signaling messengers to help modulate nerve transmission. Now, to give you a deeper understanding, you can see on the slide that the endocannabinoids are modulators of postsynaptic transmission and interacting with other neurons, as well as interacting with other neurotransmitters, including dopamine. It's important to know that the endocannabinoids serve as a signaling message for the GABA synapses and the glutamate synapses, which are the major excitatory and inhibitory signaling pathways of the brain. So that's how the endocannabinoids can modulate brain response. So since the endocannabinoids are derived from the fatty acid precursors, it appears that proper balance of fatty acids are important for the synthesis of these endocannabinoids. So it may be important to assess omega-3 and omega-6 balance in the body. So as a quick review, we make endogenous endocannabinoids in response to the environment, such as exercise, stress, music, singing, time of day, and other events. So what do? Simply put, they help relieve pain, help cope with stress and anxiety, and help control appetite. Essentially, these substances, they help balance things out in the body. And here's an example. They cause a reduction in stress, and they also increase cortisol to help manage that. Now, in regard to memory, they help with formation of a working memory as well as preventing emotional adverse memories. So these are very powerful substances in the body. So on this slide and on the next slide is a look at the metabolic pathway for the omega-6 fatty acids from which these endogenous endocannabinoid substances are produced in the body. So here you see the omega-6 fatty acid, linoleic acid, going down the metabolic pathway. Here's arachidonic acid to produce, eventually, anandamide. Also, what's important to know is that this enzyme is involved in that production, fatty acid amide hydrolase. So keep that in mind. Now, here's the metabolic pathway from the omega-6 fatty acid that produces the other endogenous endocannabinoid called 2-arachidonol glycerol. You may remember seeing a slide like this way back when in your early studies of functional medicine, but it's worth a quick review. First of all, here is the omega-6 fatty acids, linoleic acid, and it's important to know that the delta-6 desaturase enzyme is responsible for initiating the conversion of linoleic acid to gamma-linoleic acid as the omega-6 fatty acid is synthesized. I want to point out that there are inhibitors of this enzyme, diabetes being one. The ingestion of trans fatty acids and deficiencies of zinc, magnesium, iron, B2, B3, and B6. So the point here is that if the individual is deficient in these vitamins and minerals or ingest trans fatty acids, poor diet, or poor glucose control, it can decrease the efficiency of the delta-6 desaturase enzyme and potentially decrease the production of endogenous cannabinoids. And remember that both of these endogenous cannabinoids are eventually synthesized from arachidonic acid. And I want to point out the enzyme cyclooxygenase. That enzyme is ramped up in inflammation, which converts arachidonic acid to the pro-inflammatory substances. So here's how this system works. It's important to know that the endocannabinoids, they're transported into the cells by a specific uptake system and then degraded or broken down by several enzymes. The enzymes you see on this slide, fatty acid amide hydrolase, monoacylglycerol lipase, and cyclooxygenase, which I mentioned on the other slide. And cyclooxygenase is an enzyme which is upregulated with increased stress, high blood pressure, oxidative stress, causing the production of those pro-inflammatory prostaglandins, and in my opinion, may be involved in an increase in the breakdown of the endogenous cannabinoids. So addressing inflammation as well as supporting the individual with CBD oil certainly can help balance this out. And that's in my opinion. Now, for those of you that order genetic testing, you may want to look for the SNPs of these enzymes, meaning the fatty acid amide hydrolase and epoxy hydrolase 1. And remember that if these enzymes are not working properly, they will decrease production of the endogenous endocannabinoids and signaling. So you may want to look at these if you are ordering genetic testing. On this slide and on the next slide is a list of some research articles that I've made available so you have a better understanding of the endocannabinoid system. So now I want to switch gears and talk about the idea of a clinical endocannabinoid deficiency. Now I've alluded to that on the previous slides, that inflammation can cause an increase in the breakdown of the endogenous cannabinoids. So here's the take-home message on this slide. As you know, medicine continues to struggle in its approach to numerous common subjective pain syndromes that lack objective signs and appears to remain treatment resistant, such as migraines, fibromyalgia, and irritable bowel syndrome. And the commonality in symptomatology in these symptoms is hyperalgesia and central sensitivity, which some authorities consider the underlying pathophysiology that of a clinical endocannabinoid deficiency. Now, the idea of deficiency is that all humans have an underlying endocannabinoid tone that is a reflection of levels of endocannabinoids, their production, metabolism, and the relative abundance and state of the endocannabinoid receptors. In a nutshell, its theory is that certain conditions, whether congenital or acquired, endocannabinoid tone becomes deficient and the production of pathological syndromes ensue. Now, in my opinion, inflammation, oxidative stress, blood sugar dysregulation can be contributing factors to clinical endocannabinoid deficiency, which I spoke about earlier. So now I want to switch gears and talk about CBD and full spectrum CBD versus CBD isolates. First of all, medicinal cannabis has been defined as pharmaceutical grade cannabis-based products used for the treatment of illness. Now, the beneficial effects of cannabidiol, the major non-intoxicating compound isolated from the cannabis plant, has been shown to help with cognitive impairment, neurodegenerative disorders, neuroinflammation, and other neurological disorders. But what you really need to know is that empirical evidence suggests the presence of what's known as the entourage effect in cannabis. That is, observations that medicinal cannabis seems to work better in some instances when administered as a whole plant extract. That's important. Now, the entourage effect is defined as the acting by which compounds, both the cannabis phytochemicals and compounds from the endogenous cannabinoids, augment or support one another. Essentially, compounds can exert a synergistic effect through several mechanisms, for example, by interacting with each other to improve bioavailability. Simply put, you want to look for a supplement that has the full spectrum CBD. So I want to briefly talk about CBD and THC. And as you know, CBD and THC are cannabinoids that are found in hemp and marijuana. Now, hemp has a higher concentration of CBD, while marijuana has a higher concentration of THC. Now, it's the THC which induces that psychoactive effect. Now, what's important to know is that while both THC and CBD interact with the endocannabinoid system, they do so differently. THC initiates a psychological response via the endocannabinoid system's CB1 receptors. Now, the main difference between these compounds is that THC is psychoactive, making the users feel high, while CBD is non-psychoactive. And just for clarification, I have a list on this slide of the multiple effects of THC. Now remember, THC has multiple effects all at once. It's imprecise, not responsive, and may downregulate the endocannabinoid system. So with THC, there could be changes in mood, altered senses, impaired body movement, impaired memory, breathing difficulties, increased heart rate, hallucinations, psychosis, risk for the fetus when taken by the pregnant mother. And additionally, the use of cannabis can result in cannabis use disorder, which includes symptoms, lack of control, cravings, and withdrawal. So I want to encourage everyone to go to the web and download a copy of the article you see on this slide. The article is titled Dosage, Efficiency, and Safety of Cannabidiol Administration in Adults, a Systemic Review of Human Trials. Now, a systemic review was performed in PubMed, NBase, and Coltrane libraries for articles published between January 2000 and October of 2019. And this review will help you understand the dosage, efficacy, and the safety of prescribing cannabidiol in adults. You need to be aware to look for high quality CBD since there's lack of regulation. Some refer to it as the Wild West of CBD. So what you need to look for in a high quality product is a proper extraction method, that the THC has been removed, and that there has been third-party testing of the product. The CBD products I'm going to show you all meet these requirements for high-quality CBD. And if you're not familiar with third-party testing, here it is. Third-party lab testing is when a private party not affiliated with the manufacturer or distributor performs a scientific analysis of the product. It is neutral, unbiased source of information, and it is an independent test. Now, in regard to general cannabinoid precautions, I have a list of precautions on this slide, and there may be more. Be familiar with the best use practices from the research, know the potential risks and benefits, know the relative contraindications, depression, anxiety, psychotic disorders, and respiratory conditions. Be aware of liver toxicity. Do not use this product with alcohol, Tylenol, or acetaminophen, grapefruit, or other drugs that are cleared through the cytochrome P54 pathway, and do not use during pregnancy. And there's other precautions. I encourage you to download the article I mentioned on the previous slide. So here's a list of the high-quality CBD products offered by Evexia Nutraceuticals that come from MDFarma. There's a clinical CBD cream, there's a clinical CBD drops, the clinical CBD soft gels, the clinical CBD kit. Now that kit contains the soft gels and the cream, and the CBD bath therapy. And I want you to remember that if you are a client of Evexia Diagnostics, you have access to me, the Director of Clinical Support and Education, to help guide you through by our Ask the Doctor portal.
Thank you for that valuable insight, Dr. Sedano. We will now briefly review how to order these fantastic CBD products. First, go to www.evexianutraceuticals.com. Next, click View Products at the top of the page and select CBD on the left-hand side of the menu. Then, review the available products and log in or register for an Evexia Nutraceuticals account to see pricing or add items to your cart. Please note that if you already have an Evexia Diagnostics account, you do not need another account and can simply use your username and password to log in. Finally, complete the checkout process and submit your order. We are happy to assist you with any issues or questions you may have and can be reached during our business hours between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern Time at 888-852-2723 Monday through Friday. You can also connect with us anytime via email at info@evexianutraceuticals.com. Thank you again for joining us for this webinar presentation. Until next time, from everyone at Evexia Nutraceuticals, stay healthy, stay safe, and we wish you all the best on your pathway to wellness.